Today we're going to talk just a little bit about tying knots. I'm going to do a short tutorial. I'm going to show you a few different ways you can use knots to give some texture and some depth to your projects. All right, so let's talk about French knots for a minute. I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can use French knots. We'll also do a demonstration of Colonial knots and Bullion knots. So you can see here, I've used just a mass of French knots to create this curly hair. And I love doing that. I do messy ones, I do big ones, I do small ones, so that it really mimics something organic like hair, something found in nature. Next, you can see I have these little this is an abstract piece I've been working on, really tiny, as you can tell by my hand next to it. And I've used the French knots almost on like a stem, kind of a stamen coming out of, this is actually the edge of a dinner napkin, and they're just kind of popping up out of there as if they were the center of a flower. So we will go over how to do that as well. You can see I also have a little cluster of French knots here because I wanted to create kind of a ground for this flower to come out of. And another way to use French knots, I just like to use them to create visual interest. So I've just put them randomly. I have a hard time making them random. I realize when I think I'm doing them randomly and I look, I tend to have sort of an even spacing, which I don't like. I want to have them be really sort of separate. I have them here again as well. And then here I've used them, this is a landscape piece, to mimic flowers. I wanted it to look like poppies in a field, so I have used French knots for that purpose. And then here, this is kind of a little stream, and I've just taken the suggestion in the selvage of that fabric and then used it for French knots to kind of move this white over to here where it looks like it's bubbling into the ocean. Okay, so let's start with a French knot. We're going to come up from the bottom, and we are going to create some tension. I'm right-handed, so I'm gently pulling with my left hand just to create, you can see kind of how the fabric's coming up, a little bit of tension. I'm going to take my needle and point it towards my fingers, and I'm going to come under and I'm going to wrap. I like to wrap 3 times because I like big chunky knots, but you can wrap once, twice, 3 times. I'll show you what this looks like. So 1, 2, 3. And then I take my needle and I'm going to go down right next to where I came up. Not in the same hole. And I'm going to pull. And I have a French knot. So let's cluster a few together. Now what I think looks interesting is when we do knots of different sizes. So I'll show you again, and I'll do with just 2 wraps. 1, 2, I'm going to go in just next to where I came up. You don't want to wrap too tightly, and I'm going to pull. You can see that knot is just a tiny bit smaller. Just gives you a nice little feeling. Let's do 4. Let's see what happens if we do 4. We're going to do a bullion knot as well, and that's a little bit more. So then your knot starts to get really tall, so you want to kind of, I like to sometimes let those be a little looser so they're messier. You can see what that looks like. Camera's shaking a little. Okay, I'm going to add just a few more. Okay, so you can see I have a little cluster of French knots here, and I want to make that a little more interesting. It's kind of looking like a little berry. I'm going to add a few little highlights. So I've come in and I have a different color thread, and I'm just going to stick a few knots in with this color thread. Just to make it interesting. This helps make hair look a little more like hair, or it might look like there is a light shining on this side of a berry if we are thinking of this as a berry. Do one more, make this one a little smaller, pop that down. Apologize, you can hear my air conditioner going, but it is very, very warm. And there's that. Okay, so that is a French knot. Now let's take a look at a colonial knot and how that is just a little bit different. Okay, so here's the colonial knot. We're going to take the needle and bring it under the thread. Then we're going to take our thread and come around the needle and wrap it over. So we're making kind of a figure 8. We're going to go down right next to where we came up, and we're going to pull it through. You can see it lays a little bit flatter than a French knot, just a tad bit flatter. Let's do that again. We're going to come up. We bring our needle under the thread. We take the thread and we're going to bring it over the needle, making a figure 8, and then we're going to come back down. I just find that to be a little more tedious. While I do think it makes a beautiful knot, like maybe if I was going to do eyes on something, I would want to use that knot. If I really want to get that curly, loopy texture, I would use a French knot. So we have colonial knots and French knots. Let's look at a bullion knot. Okay, so now we're going to do a bullion knot. This is what a bullion knot looks like. It's a little line. So again, this is a great textural knot. I don't use this one a ton because it is time consuming and I think it's very fiddly, but it can give you some really nice texture if you want a really, really strong line in your work, or just dashes everywhere. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up, make sure I go in a thread, and I'm going to come as far away as I want my line to be, and I'm going to go back in to my fabric. Now I'm holding on to my thread here because I need to leave quite a big loop. So I have my loop, and I'm going to come up right next to my original hole, simply one thread over. Now I'm going to wrap my needle with my thread, the thread that I left in the loop. I'm wrapping it not tightly, but I want it to be each wrap to be next to the wraps below it. So I'm kind of pushing down. That looks like it might already be too long. This is the part I find a little tricky. So I'm gently squeezing my wrapping, just gently because I need my needle to move through it. This is why you want a needle with a small eye. I'm going to pull that through, and as I do that, I'm going to lay my row of wrapped thread down, and you can see what's happening. I tighten it. I needed to hold it till it was lying down flat, and then I put my needle in. Oops. And I come to the back. And that is a bullion knot. Let me see if I have enough thread to show you one more time. Put it right over here. I may not. Come up. We can make a tiny one. We'll go down and make a little guy here. Leave my loop. Come up right next to where I started. Wrap, 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 wrap. I'm going to push it down a little. I'm not wrapping tightly. That's about all I need, I think, to go that distance. Pinching that, gently pulling. As I start to feel my thread kind of coming through, I know it's time to lie that down. And then you can see it's flat. And I'm going to take my thread and bring it to the back. That guy's a little chunky on one end. He's kind of a funnel cloud bullion knot. So we have the bullion knot, the colonial knots, and the French knots. Oh, we're gonna do one more. I almost forgot. Let's do one more. I was going to show you what a French knot with a little stem on it looks like. This is easy peasy. You're just going to, let me make a knot in my thread because that will, I am a knot tyer. Some people don't put knots on the back of their embroidery. I do. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to loop my French knot, but instead of going right back down where I was, I'm just going to come over as long as I want my stem to be. Kind of keeping that pressure. And that is my stemmed French knot. Let's do another one. That one a little bit loose. Stem. I like it to be a little tighter. So I'm really putting pressure this time. Oops, as I let go. I'm standing up, so it makes it a little harder. There we go. That's a good one. And then I don't think I have enough to do one more, but let's try it. I'm kind of overlapping my stems down here. Oh, I don't really. Let's just, we can add a fake stem later. I like to have threes, so we'll do that. And then you know what I'm gonna do? Let's just fake this. Let's say, okay, I ran out of thread, but I wanted to have one more knot. I'm going to come back in with another color, and I'll come up here and 2, 3. I'm going to add another knot right on the end of that. And of course, because more is more, I'll just come in, make each one of these more. So don't be afraid to get creative. If something kind of goes like, I don't have enough, let me see what I can do. Just improvise. Add some heft to that guy because he's a skinny little French knot. There we go, little bouquet of flowers. All right, so start adding some knots to your work and have fun with it.